Hi, this is Carl. This is part 3, perhaps the final part of the discussion on first impressions of language learning. In this video, I'm going to focus on general impressions of language learning within the post-compulsory education sector. So looking at, for example, A-level study and also adult education. But before I do, I just want to recap on what I mentioned rather briefly about language learning within the secondary education sector. I mentioned that languages are no longer compulsory in either the primary education or secondary education sectors. I also went on to say that there is generally too much topic-based learning, that the grammar and the syntax of the language is taken in isolation rather than being integrated with the topics, and also due to the amount of time which school pupils have to learn one foreign language amid studying so many other topics, the teacher finds himself or herself in a position whereby there's only limited contact time, and also the period of the classroom session has to be divided equally amongst the individual members of the class in order to guarantee that differentiation will take place. But this is hard, particularly in light of the fact that many school pupils don't wish to learn a modern foreign language in the first place. Many believe that foreigners, or the majority of foreigners, can already speak English, so why should I bother to learn a new language in the first place when everybody else will be able to speak to me in my mother tongue? I also mentioned that there was far too much emphasis on reading and writing than there is on speaking and listening skills, and arguably those latter two skills are the ones which promote fluency and which are more realistic in terms of the way in which language is used in the outside world. But within the four walls of the classroom, there's less of an appreciation of just how language can be used realistically. I now want to go on to just discussing A-level study where modern foreign languages are concerned. Arguably, the learning as it occurs from the age of 16 up until the age of 18 for A-level students, as far as that's concerned, it's a more realistic approach, because you have to speak more, you have to have a thorough understanding of such a wide range of grammatical aspects of the language which you might be studying, and you also have to deepen your knowledge of the topics and even explore more advanced topics such as current affairs, politics, science, technological developments, and know the vocabulary which apply to those topics. As I say, it's all about a more in-depth learning experience. But due to the absence of speaking skills, due to the absence of the way in which areas of language are integrated in the secondary education system, means that when so many people who do take a language at A-level realise just how much of a difference there is, it creates some kind of initial shock, and they therefore find it's much more difficult than it was at GCSE, and they come to eventually realise that there is such a huge leap from the level of difficulty which is required at GCSE level to the same level of difficulty which is required at A-level. And this is why I think you get a drop-out rate. But once again, there is too much emphasis, I think, at A-level on the learning of set topics and the isolated elements of vocabulary which apply to those topics. Once again, students would tend to inextricably link set phrases or isolated pieces of vocabulary with the topics from which they first came across them. And I think that this can be rather dangerous. As far as the grammar is concerned, again, I think the understanding of the way in which elements of a sentence come together, the way in which we structure a sentence, depending on the grammatical aspect to which it applies is concerned, once again, is far too removed from the learning of the set topics. And I think there does need to be more of an integration between those two skills, the topic-based learning on the one hand and the grammatical understanding on the other. If we move into the adult education sector, again, we have the same problem. We have a topic-based learning departure, which is no good. Many teachers will then try to focus on writing down dialogues, for example, writing down role plays on the board and getting students to read them rather than getting them to speak the language without any visual reference at hand. And it is rather easy, in my opinion, and easier than most people would think, to actually get students to speak a language, to actually say something, build up a sentence verbally without writing anything down, and then afterwards actually putting what's been said onto paper and then understanding how everything fits together. I think for a majority of teachers who are in the post-compulsory sector, who are teaching adults in night classes, I think as far as these individuals are concerned, again, they're lacking the psychological skills to encourage the learners to develop spoken skills. And arguably that's one of the main reasons as to why adult learners enroll on evening or night classes. They want to be able to speak the language. They're not necessarily bothered about assessments or gaining a qualification, although that tends to be one of the prerequisites and one of the requirements of the course. That adults come to classes, that they do assessments, normally they're reading assessments rather than speaking or listening assessments, that they do these assessments and then they'll get the qualification, because without these assessments, more often than not, the people in charge of running the courses won't allow them to take place the following year. Once again, we have the problem of catering for individual learner needs, the fact that we have so many individuals in one classroom situation, the fact that there is a time restriction, for example, only 90 minutes or 2 hours of tuition each week. Some of these people, or many of these people, won't opt for the option of private tuition, but yet they'll still say things such as, I don't feel as though I'm getting anywhere, and this is all related to, or has to be related to, an appreciation that time is restricted, and also the teacher must ensure that everybody tries to keep up with one another, otherwise that could lead to a decline, a decrease in the number of people who leave and abandon the course. But once again, if you try to keep everyone together and you try to encourage people to stay on the courses by teaching using appropriate methods, then some people will feel perhaps as though they're not getting as far ahead, or they're not making as much progress as they would like to, because the teacher doesn't want a majority of enrolled individuals to actually abandon the course. So again, it's a catch-22 situation. It's deciding whether you want to focus on ensuring that as many people stay on the course as possible, or whether you actually focus on those who want to make the quickest progress, because arguably there will be people who are coming to the class who can't necessarily attend every week due to numerous circumstances, numerous reasons, and that's arguably a reality which many teachers will find occurs in the adult education sector, that you do get people abandoning the courses for whatever reason, and I think more often than not there's nothing that the teacher can do about it. So that again outlines some of the problems as far as trying to encourage attendance, regular attendance from as many people as possible in the adult education sector is concerned. So I'll conclude the videos there, and hopefully I've outlined some interesting points, some of the realities which pervade language learning in the mainstream sector and also in the adult education sector as far as language learning is concerned. Offered some of the reasons as to why people become despondent with languages, why they leave languages, and I hope to have pointed out that first impressions do make all the difference. And currently I think the situation is that teachers, or the majority of teachers, can't implement the appropriate psychological skills to encourage speaking the language, which is what the majority of learners want, and this has led to a decline in language learning popularity, and also explains why so many colleges and schools are no longer offering that language learning provision.